Many people are stepping through life believing that their story will always hold them back in some way. And I can totally relate because I have been there too, believe me. What I wish I had in those moments was a reference point, someone or something to help me believe that even the darkest parts of my story was shaping me into the person I was always meant to be. Nowadays, as a international speaker, entrepreneur, and husband to the most amazing woman, I've made it my mission to help you own your story so that you can live a life of impact, influence, and inspiration. I'm Winston Ben Clements, and this is Born to Win. Welcome back to another episode of Born to Win, and today I'm actually back with a solo episode after what's been, I think it's been 3 weeks of amazing guest episodes. So we had Anthony Bennett, we had Ikenna Onyebuchi, and then we had Solange Semedo. So check them out, check those episodes out if you haven't already. And maybe I'll kick off actually with some of your comments and some of your feedback on those guest episodes, because I'm actually on YouTube right now reading some of your recent comments. And let me start with this one here. Katrina Griffin says, "This was a great podcast. Thank you both for sharing." So that was from one of the guest episodes a few weeks ago. And then I'll read one more. I've got Jules who says, "I'm not sure about the road to take in my life at 50. I find myself daily having to constantly remind myself that it's not too late. Thanks to you both for sharing important information that anyone could use to enhance one's life." So again, another really positive review from one of the guest episodes. So I would highly recommend that you catch up with those episodes from the last few weeks if you haven't already, because you will be, I promise, I guarantee that you will be inspired to move forward. And yep, so let's move on to today's episode, where I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of becoming an expert in your field, in your industry, whatever that looks like for you. Because one of the questions that I often get asked is, how do I make myself or my brand stand out from the crowd? And we all know how noisy the marketplace is, particularly on social media. There are so many people possibly doing the same things that you're doing. So in my industry, I'm a speaker, so there's so many other speakers, pushing their stuff on social media. You might be a personal trainer, you might be a musician, you might be, a video editor. There's just a lot of noise on social media because there's a lot of people doing a lot of creative things, which means that there will be situations where we find ourselves in overlap, right? So how do you stand out? And actually, this is a huge topic. It's a topic which I feel like I could probably do a whole 2-hour workshop on, because first of all, there's so many ways and means of elevating your brand and standing out, in this crowded marketplace, which I mentioned. And then there's also a bit of mindset work behind it as well, because, oftentimes people fall into comparison, and then you end up in a situation where, you're not even being your true, authentic self in the marketplace, which of course leads to you not standing out, not being perceived as an expert, and you not carrying the authority that perhaps you should carry. And so today, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do the full 2-hour workshop. I'm just going to share with you just literally two practical steps, 2 really easy tips that you may or may not be practicing already, or you may need to revisit. And I just believe that these two are a really good place to start when it comes to standing out in this crowded marketplace and positioning your expertise and gaining more visibility for what you do, right? And so I'll just jump straight onto the first one. So the first one is, It may sound a bit obvious, but it's actually having a website in place, right? So if you want to stand out, have a website in place, particularly if you're looking to attract corporates or you're looking to attract high-end clients. Having a website for me is crucial. And I'm not talking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be a all singing, all dancing website that's going to cost you £2,000 or £5,000. For me, just a simple landing page, which by the way, you can have someone create for you on Fiverr. I think we've had landing pages created for us in my business for less than £100. So it doesn't have to be super expensive. So you can literally go on Fiverr, get a freelancer to create a simple landing page for you. And all it needs to do is to outline, obviously, a little bit about yourself, who you are, and of course, sharing a bit about, what your product or service is, right? And put it this way, and also how to book you, of course, your contact information, really important. And, put it this way, if you were to come to me offering me a product or a service, honestly, like the first thing I'm going to do as soon as we finish a conversation and before I make a decision, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and Google you. I'm going to go and Google you and see what comes up. And yes, you might be searchable if you are active on social media. But for me, a website builds just that little bit of extra trust and credibility because it just makes you look established, right? And I'm just trying to think, maybe to put it another way, it's kind of like the difference between buying something from your friend or buying something from a shop, right? So, your website builds trust in the same way because it is kind of an online shop. So if I'm going to buy something, if I'm going to make an important purchase, I would rather buy from a shop than just buy from a friend or someone I know. So let the website give you that little bit of extra credibility and authority and that feeling of being established, right? Because that is what starts to build your brand, your authority, and get you noticed as a expert. So I hope that makes sense. Have a website or a landing page. Again, remember, you don't need to break the bank for this, but just something on the internet that demonstrates that you are a real entity, right? You are a real entity, not just someone who decided to sell some stuff, right? So I'll move on. And so the second idea that I'm going to share with you is around, it's basically around creating content. So remember, I'm only going to share 2 ideas with you today because I don't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of stuff. And so for me, number 2 is just create content that demonstrates your expertise in your topic, in your industry, in whatever that thing is that you do, right? And yeah, maybe, just to use myself as an example. So if you followed me for any amount of time, you will know that I am a motivational speaker, right? I've done TED Talks. I've trained some of the biggest organizations in the world. I've been in the media. And by the way, I don't say all of this to brag, although, it is pretty cool that I am presented with these opportunities. But the point that I'm making here is that I am always creating content, on all of these various platforms, right? And actually, even this podcast that you're listening to right now, this Born to Win podcast, is a piece of content that once again allows me to demonstrate my expertise, my authority, and to build trust with you, hopefully, especially in anything relating to my specialist subject, which is public speaking, right? And honestly, what I've noticed is that there are a lot of people out there who are very quick to create, products and services, but maybe a little bit slow to create content that demonstrates that they know their stuff, right? And I think that's a big opportunity missed because there is so much value in content marketing. And even the research, and I'm sure you've heard of a statistic like the one I'm about to mention, research shows that people need to have about 7 different touch points with you before they consider buying anything from you at all, right? So people need to have 7 different touch points with you, 7 interactions before they'll consider parting with their money to buy something from you. And so for me, that could look like, again, using myself as the example, someone could go on my website, they could read my blog, they could watch my TED talk, they could, listen to this podcast, they could, Google me and find some of my TV and radio interviews. They could go on my YouTube channel. That there's so many different opportunities for them to find Winston, to have a touch point with Winston, to interact with Winston, right? And so maybe my challenge for you is this, because we want to create these touch points so that we build this rapport and this connection with people so that they are more prepared to partner with you. And so my challenge for you is this: what is one area of content creation, of content marketing that you can commit to daily, every single day, consistently for the next 21 days? What is one area? Is it social media? Is it YouTube? Is it getting featured on blogs, on podcasts? What is one area that you can commit to consistently and daily for 21 days? Because I promise you, if you do that, you will not only attract more eyes and new eyes, on your product, on your brand, but you will also build that trust, because people can clearly see, it becomes clear and obvious that you are the real deal. And so you are someone who will be positioned as an expert, who will be positioned as an authority, and someone that people can go to, right? So that's the second tip. Just create content, talk about this thing, this thing that you know so much about, this product that you know so much about, this service, talk about it on all the various platforms and use that as a way of building trust and expertise and authority. And maybe, I said I was only going to share 2 tips, and maybe I'll throw in one more, which is, I guess maybe this one is more of a mindset tip, right? Because like I touched on earlier, for me, what I've noticed is one of the biggest things that stops people from standing out is this idea of trying, I guess, falling into comparison and then trying to mimic other people to the point where they start to lose themselves, right? And, for me, honestly, I'd like to think that the same Winston that you hear on this podcast is the same Winston that, that will speak on a stage at Google, the same Winston that you see on the YouTube vlogs, and the same Winston that you find at home with my family, right? And yes, I do absolutely agree that success leaves clues, and we should always be looking to learn from the leaders and the best people in our fields and in our industries. 100% on board with that. But I must absolutely emphasize that above all, you must be unapologetically you. People must be able to connect with and feel your essence, because nobody in this world, nobody can do that better than you, because it's you, right? And like I said, shorter episode this week, guys, but I hope those couple of tips were useful, or at the very least were a good reminder. And as always, just thank you so much for always tuning in and always supporting this platform. And actually, one thing that I'd like to mention at this point before we wrap up is I've finally got a date for you to mark in the diary. So the date is Thursday, the 4th of March. So that's Thursday, the 4th of March this year, 2021, at 6 p.m. UK time. So that's 6 p.m. GMT. And on this day, I will be running a free Q&A session, which is something that I mentioned that I wanted to do. And I want to do this as a thank you, and also as an opportunity to get to, for us to get to know each other better, and maybe answer, some of the questions that you might have, which again is something that I said I wanted to do more of. I really want to build that connection between myself and you guys, because you've been an incredible support for this podcast and for this platform and for me. And so I want to find ways for us to connect and learn from each other. So please do mark that day in the diary, Thursday, 4th of March, 6 p.m. GMT, because I am looking forward to meeting you. And particularly if you are interested in topics like speaking. So I know there's a lot of speakers who listen to this, and you may have a lot of questions about the speaking industry and how, you might be able to position yourself and grow your speaking business in 2021. Then I would really, really encourage you to join that call, because I'd love to meet you and support you in any way that I can. And the link to join will be in the show notes, so definitely check the description and the show notes of this show. And I look forward to seeing you in I believe just a few days. And so that's it. Like I said, have a wonderful week and catch you soon. Take care. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And by the way, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or some other kind of app, and you got some value from today's episode, then I'd absolutely love if you could drop me a quick review. Until next time.